I still remember the day I first saw Cedar Grove Manor. I was 12 years old, riding my bike past the old Victorian mansion on Hampton Hill. Even then, with its peeling paint and overgrown gardens, I knew it was special. Every Sunday afternoon, I'd stop at its rusty gates, imagining how beautiful it could be if someone just gave it a chance. 20 years later, I finally had that chance. After a decade of hard work as an architectural historian and careful saving, I had enough for a down payment. When Cedar Grove went up for sale, I was the first to make an offer. "It's a money pit," my sister Madeline said over dinner at our parents' house. "You're crazy to want that old wreck." I tried to explain my vision. "The original woodwork is intact. The foundation is solid. Yes, it needs work, but—" "What Madeline means," Mom interrupted, "is that it's not a suitable home for someone in your position. You're single, no children. What do you need all that space for?" Dad nodded in agreement. "It's not practical, Alice. Let someone with a family buy it." Someone like Madeline, they meant. My perfect sister with her perfect husband and 2.5 perfect children. The daughter could follow Dad into law instead of wasting time studying old buildings like me. But I stood firm. My offer was accepted, and I spent every free moment planning the restoration. Every original feature would be preserved, every modern update carefully integrated to maintain the house's historic character. Then came the call that changed everything. "We need to discuss the house," Dad said, his lawyer voice in full effect. "Come over tonight." I arrived to find Madeline already there, sitting in her usual place at the family dinner table. The smile on her face sent warning signals through my mind. "There's been a development," Dad began. "The current owners of Cedar Grove, they're old clients of mine. We've come to an arrangement that benefits everyone." My stomach dropped. "What kind of arrangement?" "Well," Mom beamed, "since Madeline and Jack need more space with a new baby coming and you're still single, we're buying the house," Madeline announced. "Dad worked it out. Isn't it perfect? The kids will have so much room to play." I stared at them, unable to process what I was hearing. But my offer was accepted. "I have a contract." "Had a contract," Dad corrected. "I spoke with George Thompson. He owns the property. Explained the situation. He agreed to void your contract and sell to us instead." "To Madeline," I said numbly. "Same thing, dear," Mom smiled. "We're family after all." But it wasn't the same thing, not even close. I spent months planning the restoration. I protested. "I've researched the history, consulted with preservationists." "Oh, we won't be keeping all that old stuff." Madeline waved her hand dismissively. "Jack's already talked to contractors about modernizing. Open concept, you know. Those old walls have to go." Each word felt like a physical blow. They were going to destroy everything that made Cedar Grove special, everything I had dreamed of preserving. "You can't," I whispered. "Actually," Dad cleared his throat, "we can. The sale's already gone through. Madeline and Jack are the new owners." I looked at him sharply. "That fast?" "How?" "We expedited things," he said smoothly, "given the circumstances." Something in his tone made me pause. Dad was using his courtroom voice, the one that always hid something. "What circumstances?" "Well," Mom jumped in, "Madeline needs the space more than you do. She has a family to think about. And since you're doing so well in your career—" The pause before career spoke volumes about her opinion of my profession. "So you just took it? Just like that?" "Don't be dramatic," Madeline sighed. "We didn't take anything. We bought it fairly." "For how much?" The silence that followed was deafening. "That's not important," Dad said finally. "How much?" Madeline examined her manicure. $1. The room spun. $1. "You bought my dream home for $1. "It's a common practice," Dad began, but I cut him off. "Common practice? To void my legitimate contract and sell a historic property worth millions for $1. "The exact terms are complicated," he said stiffly. "There were other considerations." "Like what?" "That's privileged information between myself and my client." I stood up so quickly my chair fell backward. "Your client? You mean you represented both sides of this transaction? Isn't that a conflict of interest?" "Sit down, Alice," Mom snapped. "You're making a scene." But I was done sitting down. Done being the good daughter who accepted their decisions without question. "You know what the worst part is?" I said quietly. "Not that you took my dream away. Not even that you gave it to Madeline for nothing. It's that you really believe you did nothing wrong. We did what was best for the family, Dad insisted. No, I corrected him. You did what was best for your favorite daughter. Like always. I walked out of their house that night and didn't look back. Let them have their family dinners without me. Let them congratulate themselves on how cleverly they'd manage everything. But something nagged at me. The speed of the transaction. Dad's careful evasions about the other considerations. The fact that George Thompson, who'd been so enthusiastic about my restoration plans, had suddenly changed his mind. It took 3 months of research and calling in every professional favor I had, but I finally found what they tried to hide. The truth about Cedar Grove Manor, and why they'd been so desperate to get it for Madeline before anyone else could look too closely. My phone rang as I sat in my apartment, surrounded by property records and historical documents. It was my friend Lisa at the county records office. You were right, she said without preamble. There's something very wrong with that sale, and it goes back a lot further than your sister's purchase. I looked at the papers spread across my desk. Decades of ownership records, building permits, and something else. Something that would change everything. How bad? I asked. Bad enough that when this comes out, your father could be disbarred. And that's just the beginning. I smiled, thinking of Madeline's smug face as she announced her ownership of my dream home, of Dad's careful legal maneuvering, of Mom's dismissal of my dramatic reaction. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd put me in my place once and for all. But they didn't know what I discovered. They didn't know that Cedar Grove Manor held secrets worth far more than its architectural heritage. And they certainly didn't know that their perfect $1 deal was about to become the most expensive mistake they ever made. 3 weeks after my discovery, I sat in the office of District Attorney Helen Martinez, watching her face as she reviewed the documents I'd gathered. She paused, shaking her head. This is unprecedented. Are you sure about these findings? I nodded, opening another folder. The original land grant from 1872, the trust documents from 1923, the preservation covenant from 1955. And here, I pulled out the key document, the Federal Historic Site designation that was mysteriously lost in 1985. When your father became George Thompson's attorney, Helen finished. Exactly. They've been hiding this for decades. Every sale, every transfer of Cedar Grove Manor has been illegal since then. The truth had been buried in layers of legal paperwork and conveniently missing documents. Cedar Grove wasn't just a historic house, it was a federally protected landmark. More importantly, it was held in perpetual trust for the preservation of its architectural and historical significance. No one could actually own it, no one could modify it, and certainly no one could sell it for $1 to tear out its historic features. Your father, Helen said carefully, as Mr. Thompson's attorney, would have known all this. Oh, he knew. That's why they rushed Madeline's purchase through before I could dig too deeply. My restoration plans would have drawn attention from preservation societies. Questions would have been asked. Instead, they sold it to your sister, who planned to modernize it, effectively destroying the evidence of its historic status in the process. I smiled grimly, except they didn't count on me being quite so good at my job. Architectural historian, remember, the one they all dismissed as having a useless career? Helen gathered the documents carefully. We'll need statements, witnesses. This goes beyond just your family. There's decades of fraud here, involving multiple parties. I have everything you need, I assured her, including emails between my father and George Thompson discussing how to keep the property's true status hidden. How did you get those? Let's just say Mr. Thompson's grandson owes me a favor. He wasn't happy to learn his grandfather had been lying to him about his inheritance rights for 30 years. The next morning, as I was reviewing more documents in my apartment, my phone exploded with notifications. The story had broken. Historic Cedar Grove Manor Center of FRADD NV Investigation. Local ATJORNEY IC's disbarment over decades-long PROPR2Y CEGME. Federal authorities seize illegally sold historic landmark. Then came the calls. First, Madeline, hysterical. They're making us move out. They've frozen our accounts. What's happening? Then Mom, alternating between tears and threats. What have you done? Your own family? Finally Dad, his lawyer voice cracking. Alice, we need to talk. Whatever you think you know. I let them all go to voicemail. Instead, I drove to Cedar Grove, parking across the street to watch the chaos unfold. Federal agents swarmed the property. Preservation experts documented every illegal modification. Journalists gathered at the gates, cameras flashing. A familiar figure stormed out the front door. Madeline, designer handbag clutched like a shield, mascara running. "You can't do this," she screamed at the federal marshals. "We own this house. We paid for it." "You paid $1, I said, finally stepping forward. "For a property that was never for sale in the first place." She spun toward me, face contorted with rage. You did this." "No, Madeline. You all did this. You and Dad and George Thompson. 40 years of fraud, all because you couldn't stand the idea of playing by the rules. It's just an old house. It's a federally protected landmark held in perpetual trust for historical preservation, something Dad knew perfectly well when he helped George Thompson start falsifying documents in 1985. Your father," a new voice interrupted, "has bigger problems than real estate fraud at the moment." Helen Martinez approached, flanked by federal agents. "We've just executed a search warrant at his office." The Cedar Grove documents were just the beginning. Care to guess what else we found? I could guess. Dad's careful arrangements for special clients hadn't started or ended with Cedar Grove. "You've destroyed this family," Madeline spat. "No," I corrected her. "I exposed the truth. There's a difference." Later that evening, as the sun set behind Cedar Grove's distinctive turrets, I stood in what would have been my library. The room was half demolished, Madeline's modernization arrested mid-destruction. "Miss Harrison." A preservation expert approached, carrying blueprints. "We found your restoration plans in the county archives. The trust board is very impressed. They'd like to talk to you about overseeing the rehabilitation." I touched the original walnut paneling, still perfect under decades of neglect. "What about my father's legal issues?" "That's out of our hands, but given your role in exposing the fraud and your obvious commitment to historic preservation." I smiled. "When do we start?" Over the next year, Cedar Grove transformed. Not into Madeline's modernized showpiece, but into the carefully restored historic landmark it was always meant to be. Every detail I dreamed of preserving was brought back to life. Dad was disbarred, his other arrangements for special clients coming to light one by one. Madeline and Jack, their assets frozen pending investigation, moved in with Mom. George Thompson faced federal charges. And me? I was appointed permanent curator of Cedar Grove Manor, living in the caretaker's cottage and overseeing its preservation for future generations. Was it worth it? Lissa asked one evening as we sat in the restored garden. "Going up against your whole family?" I looked at the house, glowing in the sunset. Every window restored, every architectural detail preserved. Inside, tourists and history students explored rooms that told stories spanning centuries. "They thought they were punishing me," I said finally, "selling my dream house to Madeline for $1. But they never understood what made it valuable in the first place. The historical significance. That too, but mainly the truth. Cedar Grove's truth had been buried under decades of lies, just waiting for someone to care enough to dig it up." My phone buzzed, another message from Mom, probably. They still tried to contact me sometimes when they needed money or wanted to explain. I'd stop listening to the explanations. "You know what the best revenge is?" I asked Lisa. "What's that?" I smiled, watching a group of architecture students sketching Cedar Grove's distinctive features, living well in the house they tried to steal, knowing that their $1 deal cost them everything. The next morning, I found an envelope in my office. Inside was a single document, the original dollar bill Madeline had used to buy Cedar Grove. Across it, someone had written, "Some things are worth more than money." I pinned it to my bulletin board next to my preservation awards and the newspaper article about the fraud investigation. A reminder that sometimes justice comes not in the form of revenge, but in the simple triumph of truth over lies. They had tried to take my dream and give it to Madeline for $1. Instead, they had given me something far more valuable, the chance to protect Cedar Grove forever, ensuring that no one else could ever treat it as a mere commodity to be bought and sold. That was worth more than any dollar they could ever spend.